Well, hi there, and welcome back to another episode of the All Around Growth Podcast. My name is Rob Kaiser, and I am your host. Today is Friday, November 18th, 2022, and this is episode number 468 of a show where you join me with my family here on our small farm and homestead, where we talk about the 5 W's and how as we grow all around here on the homestead at York Meadow Farm. And in today's show, we are going to be talking about, benchmarks, statistics, how the show has grown, where we've come from, where we're going. And as the show goes on, we're going to take some calls from the audience. And it looks like there may be some people interested in joining the call as we move forward. So without further ado, let's get into it. Before we actually dive into the show and I kind of share with you what I'm looking at myself, we'll go ahead and take a moment to mention the sponsors. First and foremost, York Meadow Farm. Right here on the homestead, we produce handcrafted batches of probiotic-rich fermented foods and natural bath and body products scented with pure essential oils. We've got a new online store that allows you to order everything that you would normally order from the farmer's market and have it delivered right to your home. And we've also got a new merchandise page, which I promise I will be adding product to, and we'll get there slowly but surely. So if you are listening and you want to take advantage of watching and listening to the show, by all means, we would like to say thank you for your support and offer you 25% off your order with a discount code all around growth at checkout. So be sure to check that out and save. And for products that you're likely already using anyways, check out York Meadow Farm and help support the show and support your family with good quality products. I'd also like to thank Food Forest Farms, who you saw in the introduction leading up to this. The logo there, they are providing the opportunity to do exactly what we are doing now, which is live stream the show. And for those of you who are listening in audio format down the road, I will link to this in the show notes so that you can go back and watch and see everything that's going on, everything that we've been talking about here today, and participate in conversations with whomever decides to call in today. So many thanks to Food Forest Farms for the continued support of the show and giving us the opportunity to reach new audiences through live streaming like this. And this is going out not only to YouTube, but we are also streaming on Twitter, Facebook, Twitch, and if I've got things set up correctly, Float and Telegram. I would actually be interested in hearing some feedback from anyone out there that is a Float or Telegram user to let me know if those live streams are indeed working, because I'm still new to this and working through all of this. So your feedback is most certainly welcome. But before moving on and diving into the show, yes, please check out Food Forest Farms at foodforestfarms.com to learn more about everything that's going on there at their locally owned and operated, beyond organic, biointensive city farm and coffee roasting facilities there. So check it out, foodforestfarms.com. I will go ahead and link to everything we're going to discuss today in the show notes, which really isn't going to be much to discuss. We'll link to the sponsors, and I would just encourage you to go to allaroundgrowth.co and see for yourself what we are about to take a look at today. So what we're looking at here and what we're going to do in today's show is take a look at the All Around Growth podcast. And one thing that I might actually do, which I didn't think of doing before, is pull up nope, that's not going to work. So I wanted to play the introductory episode, or a little snippet on the YouTube channel. But if you go to All Around Growth or youtube.com/@allaroundgrowth, you will see the 60-second video soundbite of the very first introductory episode. And I thought it would be nice to take a stroll down memory lane and look at where everything started and how it started. The very first episode was published on September 30th of 2020, and that was the introduction to the All Around Growth podcast. A very vague and a very vague snapshot of what my intent and objective was at that time. And I'm pleased to report that over 2 years in and 468 episodes into this project, it is still on point with that introduction as far as I'm concerned. The very second episode, and by no means am I going to go through these one by one, but the second was a history of the podcast, kind of what got it to that point. And then the remaining first 10 episodes were on topics that were provided by the audience at that time. So this was a passion project. And I basically told people that, hey, I've got this idea. This is what I'm doing. And, initially it started in 2019. And then I did 10 episodes, not these 10 that you see right here, but I did 10 episodes, which I'm sitting on and may release as part of a Patreon thing down the road, so that people who want to talk about the nitty gritty things that we're all not really comfortable sharing publicly, we're all able to participate with one another in, Lord have mercy, dare I say, a safe space. All right. So, and I don't think this is the platform for that, quite frankly. So, whether that's on Patreon or some other kind of subscription thing, I feel like that's down the road. And luckily, I am blessed to be working with people who have similar objectives and goals in mind. And we are collaborating on how to best do this with our own personal projects that we are working on, passion or not. And while this started out as a passion project and basically just talking about what I was doing to improve my life, and at this point in time, the podcast was introduced as providing tools and resources to build the life and homestead of your dreams, or something like that. And as you can see, a lot of these attitude of gratitude, boundaries, deeper talk, the strangest secret in the world, very early on in the show, just 1 to 2 months in, we start talking about goals. And that's really where the show started to morph and change. And as time went on, what happened was I was utilizing a tool, a deck of cards called the Deeper Talk deck, which is an expansion of the original Icebreaker deck. And the Icebreaker deck is a deck of cards from the Best Self Company, and it contains 150 cards with prompts that will help you, for example, get to know people on a deeper level, have more interesting and meaningful conversations, and elevate your communication skills. So this was one of the tools that I used when I was first starting the show to provide some context and some, just some fodder for conversation. And that was an effective tool to basically provide me with some mental fodder for conversation. And as the show continued throughout the year, we began talking about health related things, intermittent fasting, goals, just simple things like back pain, more talk on fasting as things went on, talk of my own journey with epilepsy, and just free talk episodes, talk of how to stay productive utilizing the Pomodoro technique, more talk of goals. You know, at this point in time in early 2021, I was still performing what's called a past year review. And that was something that I learned about from Tim Ferriss. And I outlined that in this episode number 75, titled Past Year Review, on January 4th, 2021. At this point in time, if you, or as we continue to scroll through and just take a look at shows moving forward, moving on in time, there's a lot of talk about topics like, what would you do if you refused to give up if offered $10 million? And, you know, where are you lazy in your life? And what's your excuse? And a lot of these topics, what you want versus what you fear, right? Like, I'd like to claim that this is original content that I generated, but the reality is it's not. Very little of what I'm sharing with you guys and very little of what I've shared in this show historically has actually been original content. I make no bones about that. And I think it's important to understand that a lot of content creators out there, authors, writers, you know, what we do is we simply communicate the content that we've absorbed over time in the manner we're translating it and communicating it in our own language. And even though we're all speaking the same language, presumably people that are listening to this, unless there are some people out there that are listening to podcasts in other language in order to better assimilate, which actually isn't a bad idea. And there are some podcasts that are set up like that. One of which is called Coffee Talk Spanish, which I began listening to a couple of years ago, which is kind of like an intro to conversational Spanish, but I digress. Lots of talk about, lots of references to a book that I don't have right in front of me, but it's called The Rudder of the Day by Dan Miller. And I began reading from The Rudder of the Day quite frequently and implementing more physical activity in my life. And again, at this point in time, you can see right here, episode 93, I'm very clearly talking about the rudder of the day with an episode titled Finding Your Rudder. And as the show continues to progress, just into the first 100 episodes, we do a looking back and looking forward, which this is kind of an iteration of that today. And one thing I failed to mention, though, before going any further is, and I wanted to kick this off, but I got a little distracted with the live stream and doing all the things that we're doing. Oh my gosh, we're 20 minutes in, and I mentioned that we were going to take calls at 15, 20 minutes in. I got to rambling, so let's scroll through this. The long and short of it is, I used The Rudder of the Day and several different devotionals to create the bulk of these episodes, with the exception of these Building the Commercial Kitchen episodes. The daily devotionals were 365 Tao, which is a book by Deng Ming Dao. The other book was a book that was gifted to me called Strength for Today, written by Dr. David Jeremiah, a Christian devotional that was gifted to me. And really, I kept on going back to The Rudder of the Day. And that became the big foundation for the show for a long time, until through involvement with the 48 Days community, I stumbled across the goal setting workbook that I've been talking about incessantly and almost in every episode. And this right here, anybody who's watching, is where I do a deep dive into that. November of 2021, last year, right around this time, episode 219, we do an introduction into this goal setting workbook. So anybody who wants to learn more about that and do a deep dive into that workbook, if you have downloaded it, and I know that several out there listening have, then by all means, go back to episode 219 through episode 226. That's an 8-part series on that goal setting workbook. And the rest of the year was implementing the goals into the show and trying to structure the show around those 7 aspects, along with topics like aggravating drivers, mysterious burritos, and free talk. So while the show may appear as though it has lacked structure over time, the structure eventually came to embrace that which is outlined in the goal setting workbook, and ultimately to provide some diversity and try to bring the show back to the homesteading element, which seemed to lack. I started referencing a lot of content from the Old Farmer's Almanac, which was nice. So at this point in time, we've got a healthy mix of, and this is kind of current to this day, at this point in time, we've got a healthy mix of motivational talk from devotionals, thoughts from Rudder of the Day, thoughts on varying topics from the 7 aspects of life: financial, physical, personal development, family, spiritual, social, and career. And in April, May, things start to get interesting because, as you will see for anybody watching, thoughts on resignation on May 11th, Hold My Beer, and an episode on May 13th titled Life is All About Relationships, which was the day that I left my job. Moving forward, there are episodes about self-employment, and the last few months have really involved a lot of change and development with the show. And I think that's a perfect segue into talking with you guys out there and anybody who has a desire to call in. So it looks like Sean is out there and Rachel is out there. Possibly Rachel may be busy, but hey, Sean, if you are in a position, you want to come on and just talk a little bit about what has been changing in your life over the past few years. And
hey, Rob.
There we go.
Hi, so hey, this is weird. I feel like I'm at a Zoom meeting for work or something, but not.
I can't hear you.
Let's see.
Oh, wait.
I'm not muted. It looks good on my end.
No. I had it messed up. I'm still trying to figure out this live stream. Thank you for bearing with me.
No, that's cool. Yeah, last few years. I was trying to think when you're going through the episodes, how long I've been, I guess a part of this community listening to your show. I think I probably got wind of it early on through the Survival Podcast and that group.
Yeah.
So what, more than a year ago for sure. What, 18 months? I don't know.
Something like that.
Blur, right?
A considerable amount of time. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I'm trying to think. And so this, I guess the season of life I've been in, I have 2 older teenage kids, 16 and almost 19. So going through all those transitions, kids moving out, all that kind of stuff. So definitely a lot of, and then of course the whole pandemic stuff. I had a bunch of health stuff that towards the end of that. So a lot of stuff went on at the same time I found your show, like for me personally, I mean. So that's what was kind of, appealing or interesting. Yeah, like you said, you went over all your content and meandered quite a bit through a lot of stuff. And sometimes I'm like, what's this have to do with whatever we heard yesterday? Right. But it not as a criticism, but it was like, it's like 2/3 like, wow, yeah, I feel that. And it's like, well, that's kind of interesting, but random. And then get back to something different. It's like, who would have known I would have enjoyed that as much as I did, or things like that. So, yeah, I think it was just kind of serendipitous how timings and things line up, like you're trying to figure out, hey, how do I get through a phase in my life or something, or how do I make things better? How do I take a little bit more deliberate, intentional control to improve things? And this sort of fell in my lap in parallel with that.
Yeah, the community. I suppose it feels kind of weird saying that. That's developed around this wasn't. And I spoke about this with a few other people recently. That wasn't really the objective with this, but it sort of was a result of it. And I'm by no means am I complaining or anything, because it's resulted in really cool relationships like the one I've established with you and we've established with so many other people. And a lot of times in the community, what's nice is that more often than not, we're really not talking about things that are going on in the show. We're just talking about things that are going on in our lives, and that's made this real nice because I mean, as the host of the show, I get to learn about everyone else out there, or at least the people who are very much involved, like yourself and Rachel and a lot of other people, and it's really rewarding, you know. And I'm glad that you called in and
Cool.
expressed some of that. That's excellent.
Yeah, and thanks for keeping it all going, because I think it is kind of a feedback loop, and I don't know how much meanderings and BS I talk about on the channel might inspire elements of your upcoming episodes or spawn an idea, or not just me or anybody in that Telegram or wherever else you get stuff input from. But I think that's kind of a neat way to do it because a lot of times, there's so many podcasts and media content out there, right? Everything from like the full on professional, like Dave Ramsey tier, and then there's people with Patreons that are like, if you pay $100, you can ask me a question, kind of thing, and all the way down to very organic like this, where it's like, hey, I know the dude and half his audience, at least on the internet, or at least it feels
Yeah,
that way.
yeah,
And
and
so it's
go ahead.
yeah. No, I was just saying that it's really kind of interesting to, you don't have a super structured agenda necessarily. Like, here's our next thing about, sustainable agriculture or something, which is interesting, and I don't mind that. But it's not like that's your shtick and that's all you'll ever do.
Yeah, and actually, that's kind of an interesting thing that you brought up because when I saw a couple people pop in, I was like, oh, and then I was like, it's been 20 some minutes already. That
Oh
went
yeah.
by fast. I like to talk, blah blah blah. But it was, the things really lacked. I guess, yeah, that's an accurate term. They kind of lacked some structure. There was some direction as with the goal setting workbook for sure. But in September, when I did some work with a guy named Eric Johnson, who is the podcast talent coach, and
Okay.
that's his gig. It suggested to really tie the show into the homestead. So in doing that, I turned it into, um, you know, I can't do it with you on the screen. But it's very much, this is kind of like I was saying the other day, like a
Hmm.
spoke of the farm, the spoke of the wheel of which the farm is the hub. So I'm
Right.
hoping that as time goes on, it will be a little bit more structured with that, especially as things continue to develop and grow, which they likely will
Hmm.
since leaving my job in May. And
Mm.
I don't know if we want to talk too much about work and stuff, but a lot of us out there are or have experienced in the group of some work transitions and career transitions and stuff in addition to everything else over the past few years. You want to talk to that at all, or no?
Well, I don't know. I'm not opposed to it, and I didn't mean also. I didn't mean any criticism about the agenda or lack
Oh
of.
no,
I
I didn't
wasn't
take it as such.
suggesting like, oh yeah, you're a disorganized idiot.
No, 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 no.
No, but I do think that it is related, and I think that, like you said, the hub and the spoke metaphor is pretty good. It does come back to the farm and building the life, and you're going to have a lot of, there's a few people in this space that sort of talk about that. There's financial elements and administrative things and social things, and they all have to be in place to make the whole thing go.
Yeah.
Back to the work stuff. So I'm just a little bit about me. I work from my home. I'm in, I guess, in the tech industry. I manage a team of, of QA software engineers. So we test mobile apps and other things like that. And I've been doing this for a long time. And I've been at my current job for just coming up on a year next month. And this is the first, and prior to that, I was a startup, and I'm in the greater Seattle area. I'm about 25, 30 miles from Seattle. So that's kind of our metro core area. And so I was at a startup for about almost 4 years before that, doing, healthcare tech kinds of things, similar work on paper, really. But it was half that time there was, commuting to an office every day, downtown, riding the train and whole thing. to then 2020 happening and staying at home. And at the same time, 2020 happened, like that March, I guess it was, when like COVID got real and everybody started to have to turn on the TV and listen to their governors and all that nonsense. My kids were home from school. I was working from home. My wife was working at home. I got not really a lot of any money change, but I got a promotion in that I became a manager of the team, and not just, they said, hey, we're scaling this up. I had to hire 6 people in that year remote, never having met them face to face, shaking their hands or none of that. So like over a Zoom call or like this medium, like interviewing them and saying, hey, I'm going to offer you, pretty competitive tech salaries and all the stuff. And if I get this wrong and hire the wrong person, I wasted a lot of time and money. And, I only, all that stuff, all that pressure. And I'd never done it anyway in any context before. And then people in 2020, they said, oh, was that time stressful? I'm like, well, which part? Like the social transition of not seeing any humans and face to face, never going to work, never having coffee with random workmates and talking about the game yesterday or all the BS you do, or my kids being at home 24/7, or the new job. And the work I was in was online virtual telehealth medicine, which was kind of a flailing thing. And then COVID hit and it was like, holy shit, everyone needs this, because nobody wants to go to the pediatrician because of COVID. And so they're like, hey, I have a 3-year-old with a runny nose. It's 10 p.m. kind of thing. And so our business went up 20x. So I'm working my butt off, like longer days than I ever did. I'm hiring. I'm in a new role. My kids are home. My family's trying to figure out. We're figuring out, are we all going to die from this? Remember, this is March 2020.
Yeah.
We weren't cynical yet. We were still sort of fearful. Like, we don't know. I mean, this could still kill us all. And people are like, well, they ask, was one element to that stressful? And I'm like, well, which one? Everything in my life is different within 30 days.
Yeah.
Everything. My Monday through Friday, like my family dynamics, my social stuff, my everything. So it took a lot of distance and time. Getting back to the work thing, I know it's kind of a digression, is I didn't realize like which things made that bad until I got a lot of distance and time from that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Meaning, like what the stressors were. Because anytime you do something new, it's a natural stress. Hey, I'm going to relocate you to a different city. Well, there's going to be some stress, even if you love it. Just, and even if it's a net positive, just learning and adapting is disruptive and a little uncertain. But, fast forward later that year, I was diagnosed with some health problems and ended up kind of down a rat hole of stuff I had to deal with. And it was 2021. I have, it's not a serious thing, but I ended up having a medical procedure that it worked and it achieved its stated goal, but I had some complications post-op. And so I was really sick for months after and spent a week in the hospital or more. And, basically I caught double pneumonia from like removing the ventilator during surgery, because I was under for like 8 hours and they did it wrong. And it was like a Jimi Hendrix thing where I aspirated, really gross. I don't want to freak everybody out. But that's when I had the moment, though, about weeks after that, where I decided to quit that job. And the main thing was it was August 2021. Remember, I had hired all these people remote. I'd met a handful of them during the pandemic, just onesie twosie. And so I had one employee who's originally from India, and she lost her immigration right to work in the US because of administrative BS with COVID. Yeah. So I was down one team member, and she was a very senior, great person, like the absolute workhorse of the team captain, if you will.
Yeah, the one you don't want to lose.
Right. So she's gone for that until further notice, until the government says otherwise, because of paperwork. And paperwork's just jacked up because of COVID. And so we're down them, and I'm like, hey, I need to take a week off because I'm having this outpatient procedure, and ended up being a week in the hospital. Then I came back online. I'm working remote. And I'm like, I can do this. And everyone's like, dude, you look like you're dead. Like you lost like 20 pounds in a week and your eyes are sunk. And like I had double pneumonia. And so I was like half my lung capacity. I'm like, what are you doing? Just awful. And all this happened. I had another person who was planned on vacation internationally. So she's like in Bulgaria. And when people take international trips, they tend to take them longer because of the expense and the jet lag. And so they're like, dude, I do this every 3 years. I'm going to take 3 weeks. I'm like, I get it. You're going to see in-laws and Kazakhstan and stuff and make it worth
Yeah.
it, right? It's a lot of money. And so my team's cut in half. And so my boss at the time, this is where it all comes to a head. We're in a one-on-one thing. And she's like, you don't look good. Are you going to be okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm doing better. Thanks. And she's like, back in August, you made a lot of the people in the leadership of this company really nervous. I go, what do you mean? I go, like, you were worried I was going to die? She goes, well, a little bit, but mainly, like, you had like half your team was just unavailable for most of that month. I go, I know. And she goes, that was really bad planning. I go, planning? You think I planned to wake up in the ICU? I'm like, WTF? And then she's like, well, but the one person lost their visa and this other person, and you had one person who approved their vacation. I go, she hadn't seen her mom in 3 years, had to go back because of COVID, and finally got, anyway. And so I said, well, what went wrong? Like, what did I fail to deliver or execute on? I said, my team, when they found out I was sick, they put in extra hours. Like, they did 60-hour weeks knowing they had half the crew.
What was the answer to that question?
What, her question?
The question that you asked of what went wrong.
Well, everything. Well, the answer was everything got delivered on time. Nothing was missed, but it was scary. So it was like,
okay,
if you can tolerate like a sports analogy, it's like you're watching. It's 4th and long, and there's a few seconds left, and that's really stressful. My team might not make that completion, and and you made it really stressful for me, team. I didn't like that. I want an 8-score victory so I don't have to worry. And I'm like, dude, they rallied. They made it happen. Nothing was missed. I'm sorry you were. I go, I was in the freaking ICU. I'm sorry it was uncomfortable and uncertain for you. And then I just put it all together. I'm like, fuck this. This is stupid. I don't need to put up with this.
Yeah.
I go, it's one thing to just be a little cold and lack empathy, but to like call me out saying that all these different life circumstances of individuals going sideways, just, coincidentally at the same time made you uncomfortable. I'm like, geez, so that made it really easy to just close that chapter and move on.
Yeah. And even then, it's still, maybe it made it easier, but still transitions like that are difficult, even when it seems very apparent, like this is the right thing to do. And that's, that's nice. I mean, even with what you shared here, there's more detail than what I recall from the dialogue in the group. And yeah, it's good it's good to be where we are now. I'll just say that.
Well, and I think that, I know this isn't like a pandemic retrospective or anything like that, but I do think that shook things up and shook off a lot of rust and inhibitions and things that we had. Because a lot of people, after you go through stuff like that, and I'm not trying to make this sound like some PTSD life-changing kind of thing, but it does kind of wake you up and say,
sure,
take stock of things and say, well, what am I willing to put up with and why? What's the risk reward cost benefit? That kind of analysis about different choices you might have. It's like, and we saw that a lot. It sounds really sad, but there's been a lot of relationships that broke up, divorces and things, and resignations, and people relocating and selling stuff or whatever, saying, I don't really like this. I'm not going to keep up with the Joneses anymore because it hasn't worked. And I got the bucket of cold water dumped on me. And,
yeah. And
I don't know if that was how you kind of like, at least that was fresh in my mind when you started reflecting publicly about, do I like my job or do I want to change, as Rob? And so for me, I'm like, well, dude, this is how I felt. So I was a little bit maybe more gung ho than I would have been a year prior, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting how things align like that. And I think, Rachel and I were talking in this book club last night, and it was a small showing. So it was really just a conversation with her and I, and we were talking about this pandemic, and I don't know if she's out there and can jump on or wishes to jump on. Maybe I should just throw her in.
Yeah, I
here
can
to
step
see if
off.
she's
This
out
isn't
there.
the Sean
No,
show.
I'll just throw her in and see if she can chime in, because I don't know if she's just listening or muted, but maybe she's working and can actually talk. who knows? But one of the things we were talking about last night was the fact that this whole this whole experience over the past few years related to the virus was maybe one of the best things that could have happened. If we want to look at all of that in retrospect, it was, it's not like this show was a result of that, but like I was doing a lot of talking and like creating content during all of that kind of through another thing. But then I realized like, this would be a good, of all the times to start something, that was a good time to do it, because it spurred a lot of transition and growth in everyone's life. Hi, Rachel, you're here.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hey, Rachel.
Nothing like getting thrown into the fire. Hello.
You're right.
Yeah, I already did it. It's warm. Come on in.
I was putting herbs away while you guys were chatting.
What kind of herbs were you doing? Were you drying them or what?
No, like I have, let me see, ashwagandha, mulberry leaf. I don't know, all sort, like lots of them.
You grew all that?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So is it like dehydrated and you're?
Yeah, it's been dry
it
like early summer. I've got yarrow, goldenrod, nettles, juniper berry, turkey tail.
Like an organic pharmacy.
Yeah. Well, somewhat. Yeah.
So what's the plan with all this stuff, with all the goodies that you got?
A lot of it we just use daily for food. Like I'm drinking nettle tea right now. It's just kind of part of our day. Free food.
Yeah.
Herbs are expensive. Like you buy them fresh, retail.
Yeah, they're crazy.
They're so easy. Like perennials, like thyme and stuff. So easy to grow, at least where I live. It's like, I don't know why you would pay $3.99 for like an ounce of it at Kroger or whatever. It's like, I have a bush the size of a coffee table.
I have to bring in some of mine. A few of them live through the winters here. I have a rosemary tree that's like, it's in a huge pot. I just bring it in every year. Otherwise it would die. Maybe once it gets bigger, it won't die. But right now
I have a ridiculous rosemary in my front yard, and I just like had to chainsaw it up. It was like blocking the sidewalk. It's stupid.
I love it. It smells so good.
I use it, but I can't. I have like 7 quart jars of like dried up rosemary. It's like I can't consume the rate of growth.
Yeah, no, you can't.
Does it grow so like aggressively there that if you hack it back like you did, will it come back from the ground? Oh, really?
It's a annual thing, because it just keeps branching out. It's like a upside down spider kind of.
Yeah, mine looks like that. Yeah, but I don't think mine won't live through the winter. I don't.
No, we made this raised bed, and it's on the west side of the cabin, so it kind of like it gets a lot of heat from the cabin, and then because it's like this hugelkultur thing, I think there's radiating some heat from there. But everything, including the rosemary in there, actually has wintered over. It doesn't get big, but it stays and it'll grow, and like so that's been really nice. All that stuff in there is surprisingly like wintered over well, which is cool.
Yeah. You're in 6B, right?
6, A. I would say A if we had to split hairs like that.
I think Sean is probably somewhere in 6 just because of the ocean there.
You're probably like way up, like more, yeah.
How do I look that up? Let's see. I'll type in my. I'm gonna do my zip code here. It says it's yellow 8B.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, because you guys have the ocean temperature.
Yeah, so it's really weird here that the climate doesn't change, or the weather doesn't change quickly. Like when I visit the south of the Midwest, it always freaks me out that there can be a day where it's 40 degrees change in a day, or like a storm comes from it's like perfectly sunny and beautiful and dry, and then it's like thunderstorms.
Boom.
Because we got mountains on 2 sides with lots of water, so it stabilizes the temps and the air can't move. So it's just like fog that sits on us 6 months, and it's sunny for 6 months, and not that cold. But it really freezes at night.
I mean, you also lived in San Diego too, so Is it, I mean, are there some parallels there with like the mountains and valleys, but just maybe like more extreme with regard to moisture and water and stuff like that? You know, with the
It's
way the
actually,
fog settles and sits.
yeah, I remember the June gloom in San Diego
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure. Yeah. Yeah, well, the water, I mean, coastal cities, that, and then you probably remember, if you don't have to go barely 10 miles inland in Southern California for it to get way hotter. Like at the
yeah,
beach, it's like 78 and dry with a breeze, super comfortable. It's like, this is wonderful. And you just go really 10 miles east
yeah.
inland and it's
Escondido is a
100.
different world.
Yeah, it's like 108 degrees. And it's like, what the heck happened? How is it 30 degrees warmer, right? And the water is a big part of that.
Yeah, we're in snowpocalypse right now. So I'm in grow zone 5, grow zone 4.
Ooh.
And we have a foot of snow on the ground.
That's what I was just going to ask. How much you get? Oh, geez.
A foot right now. It's quickly accumulating.
Oh,
And that's what's weird here. It freezes at night. Like it's been about 29 at night this week, which
Right.
is really, really weird because everyone I talk to, there's a lot of transplants that move out here just because the population's double than it was when I was a kid because the metro area is booming and all that. So you meet people that have moved from Indiana or somewhere and they always say, oh, I know how to drive in the snow and things like that. I'm like, well, where you came from, here's a few differences. It freezes at night and thaws in the day here. It almost rarely stays frozen for more than a few days consecutively. And so it has kind of like that ice rink effect where it gets up to 36 and then goes back to 26. And we have really steep hills and there's nobody plowing or salting very often. They just in recent years started doing that antifreeze drip stuff on the steepest parts of hills. But it's a different dynamic just because you have that slick, slimy, fresh stuff. And it's not like packed, crunchy snow in the country where you can actually get some traction. Yeah. So they have, if you look on YouTube and stuff, there's classic videos over the past years where idiots in Seattle they call it Snowmageddon and stuff like that. They're in car accidents. They're sliding down these 20% grade hills, crashing every parallel parked car on the way down, like buses spinning out on the interstates. It's stupid. It's really embarrassing.
Like the old game Plinko.
Yeah. It's starting to happen here because we have a lot more people moving here from downstate, and our weather is dramatically different than downstate. So yeah,
it's generally not too bad here, except for like the first snow, which is basically where we're at now. And past couple of days, it snowed more up towards the lake and the snow belt, but it takes a little bit of time for people to acclimate because when it first snows and gets, especially now, it gets that slicky ice, sleety stuff, and that's no.
The snow that we're getting right now is just really wet and heavy stuff, which is the worst stuff to drive on once it packs.
Yeah.
But I love it. I'm home. I'm cozy. I'm getting stuff done today. I've started my Thanksgiving cooking. So.
Yeah. What, is that what's in store for the rest of the day? Thanksgiving cooking and just more homesteady stuff?
Just for right now. I just had to cook the pumpkin to make pumpkin pie. Because I work a little bit next week and I won't have time.
Yes.
So I had to cook the pumpkin. I don't think the rest of the day I'll be cooking. I'll do it now. Actually, the rest of the day is blogging and tech. But in the morning, I cannot get myself to sit still very well. So I have to wait till the afternoon.
Routines take time.
I'm kind of the opposite.
Sitting still is not my strong suit. So I have to wear myself out first physically, and then I can sit still.
Interesting.
I don't know how things with Rob and I were talking about transitioning to stuff in the pandemic, and for me, it was a big shift of like I'm not commuting for 30 minutes each way every day, for which I did for years, right? So that was time to either listen to podcasts, read a book, all that stuff, because I'd be on a train or something like that, or sometimes a bus, and it's like, I can sleep in 30 minutes later and waddle over to my desk and, fire up the laptop and look at the time savings. But I actually ended up spending like an hour more a day working because that commute time bled into more actual work time. But it wasn't like this hardcore on off. You'd start to meander into it. Like, I'll just do some email. I'll just do some stuff. I'll just read up on this other thing. And if you weren't careful, the boundaries were super important. And that was it took me like a year to really get good at it, where I would be kind of working for like 14 hours a day. I mean, like checking updates. It's like, oh, there's a message thread from this team at work or this thing. And I got to the point where I'm like, I'm in a dedicated room, and when I close the door, the laptop doesn't walk with me. It used to be I would like go to the kitchen or the family room, or, oh, I'm gonna like finish this up, kind of like watch a football game while I pretend to half work. And then you were always kind of like, my whole time I'm awake, I'm like 30% working. And it feels like, oh, that's kind of nice. You're in your slippers and pajama pants or whatever. But psychologically, it builds up. It builds up though, and it builds up like a corrosion or something, and it accumulates. And then after a few months, you're like, what the hell's wrong with me? Why am I so miserable and like burned out? I should be thrilled and happy. I'm at home petting my dog while I work for 8 hours a day. It's like, no, I'm kind of working 14 hours a day, and I'm never disconnected completely.
Yeah. I can see. I don't work from home, but I do struggle. I own a small business, and then before that I worked in an office, and I managed a very small portion of that, and I had the same issue. I had to stop answering text messages after 5 o'clock, and because it creeps in, and it's hard not to answer it. It's hard not to answer it. Really hard.
Yeah. And you do feel that obligation, and it's and because a lot of other people do it too. And because other people are doing that, you don't want to, not be like them. So,
right. Yeah. I had to, I think it probably depends on your personality, but for me, I have a hard time not letting it bother me if I do look at it or answer the email or the text. So it's better if I just don't even look at it and leave it till the next morning.
Yeah. I eventually learned that, but I'm back with that same struggle now, because like I'm doing the work from home thing, and it's easy to, when you're doing something, of your own accord, like later at night, to just like, oh, let me check the York Meadow Farm thing, see if any orders came in. Let's see what, or whatever. And it's like, none of that is that urgent that maybe should wait until the next day, because I think that's why a lot of, in going to conferences and things like that, small farm conferences and things like that, on way more than one occasion, at way more than one conference, farmers and homesteaders would talk about the importance of stepping away and even like leaving your place for a period of time, one day a week, to like ensure that you have that degree of separation. Because naturally, a lot of people on small farms and homesteads are there all the time, or a lot of time, and that's kind of become the case with people working from home too. So
definitely,
it's important
to your
keep that balance.
Well, and like people were talking about, non-work things. If you want to introduce a positive habit, whether it's a daily exercise routine, some people want to do a certain amount of reading. I know people that do, Bible studies or different things, or devotional kinds of things. They're like, I want to spend 15 minutes on a thing, or whatever it might be, routinely every morning, or with their coffee. And I think it takes enough time, that kind of thing works. If you stop doing it, you feel weird and uncomfortable. It's like, I didn't get my exercise in. I didn't get my routine in, of whatever that might have been for you. And that can take a long time. I mean, it might take 6 months or longer.
Yeah.
But you kind of just have to do some ridiculous stuff. I mean, we're all different, but it's like, do I need a reminder on my phone? It's like, hey, it's 7 a.m. Make sure that you do your thing. Or whatever it is for you. And then after a while, it's like, hey, this is just part of my life, and I don't need to be reminded. But it's amazing how long that kind of change can take to make it like autopilot and part of what you really do. So it's like, oh no, I didn't walk through, in the summertime, like I would love going through my modest backyard vegetable garden and just picking a few weeds. It's like, hey, that was my coffee break. I'd take 20 minutes and pull some weeds, check on stuff. It's like, oh, this one's crowding out this thing, and I'm going to pull this or put this over here. Like you could not really do that with any scale agriculture, obviously, but with 1,000 square feet or less, it's totally doable. Just take a quick walk and see how things are going. And And I really learned a lot about, hey, this isn't working as well here. Why is this tomato variety really thriving and this one's struggling? And I just kind of take some mental notes. And next year, I optimize for the one that does better or whatever. And those are like, at the end, like it's one of those things. Each day, it's like a 2-minute investment. But after a year, it's like, holy crap, Sean, you grow a lot more tomatoes this year. What happened? And I'm like, I'm not really sure, but I guess I've been looking at it every day for all last year, and then you end up knowing a lot more about what you're doing. And I think that's true for anything you want to do. You mean learning a second language or whatever goals you might have. Just that consistency. And a guy I used to work with, my last company, said something. It sounds really silly, but at the same time, it really stuck with me. He's a big golfer, and that doesn't really so much matter. But he said if he wants to get good at golfing, it's way better to set a goal of committing to practice. Like go to the driving range 3 times a week and spend an hour or whatever each time, rather than say, I want to reduce my par by 2 after 9 months. Because if he just showed up, or like going to the gym or putting in the time or read so many books a year or whatever your thing might be, that's going to be the thing. The goal should be to show up and do the thing and be present, and not to be, I'm going to be smarter at the end of the year or 100 pounds lighter or whatever your thing is. And that really stuck with me of like, because that's the thing that's the actionable part, is doing the thing of
that's
walking
a way
away
better
from
metric.
Yeah.
It's way more measurable too. In a different sense. And I never really thought about it that way. Did that guy, your golfer guy, did he mention anything about like hours, a specific number of hours by chance?
I mean, he didn't really go deep into it, but this was in the context of kind of the corporate goal setting. And you've probably heard this stuff, and it's a little cheesy, but like SMART goals, right? Mm-hmm. What are they? Simple, measurable, achievable. What's the R? T is timely. Yeah. So the idea is you need something measurable, and saying I'm going to practice my Chinese for 15 minutes a day is very measurable, right? You can look at the clock. I do it. I sit down from 6:45 to 7, and then I'm done to 7. Okay. Maybe I'm mentally foggy or not, but every day I show up and do that much, or lift weights for that long, or walk that distance, or whatever the thing is you're trying to do. Maybe you're not going to get the same benefit every time. The ROI could vary, right? Just like you go to exercise. I didn't get a lot out of this workout session or something, but you showed up and you did it. And so I think that's the point, Rob, is a lot of times people have metrics like you will make $1,000 by the end of the quarter, profit increase. But what if you say instead, make sure every order is fulfilled within your time period, 3 days or whatever your goal is. That's the better one. Then you're going to end up with happier customers that will more likely to repurchase and so forth, right? It's the same kind of outcome, but you're making your goal the what you do every day and not what you're going to get at the end. Because you can sit there all day long and say, I want to lose 50 pounds. And
this is interesting because I'm totally, working through this, and I'm actually struggling with a couple that I'm specifically in career, because I don't know how, I'm not, I'm at a real new phase in this whole career. So that what you just said is helpful, because that helps reframe some of the ways that I'm looking at things, like how much money am I going to make? And, you have to serve before the money comes. You have to do other things before the money comes. And maybe those are things that are worth thinking about and measuring.
Yeah. I mean,
points.
Yeah. I hope that helps. I mean, I've screwed up a lot of things. That's the only reason I have ideas. I've just seen so many things not work. And you hear so much of this stuff, like sounds like, and a lot of it is, I'm not one of these like inspirational bumper sticker kinds of people that are like, hey, I just love this stupid trite phrase thing that people chant. It's not me at all, but there is some truth to some of that stuff. And one of the things you hear thrown around a lot are like, celebrate failure and be okay with it. And for a long time, I thought that was BS. I thought that was just some weird new age thing. But what I've kind of distilled and teased away is the reason that failure is good is it's learning that something's not going to work quickly, right? As painlessly and the least expensive way. So back to gardening, something more practical. There's, N varieties of carrots you could plant, and they're probably not going to all work for your region and season and whatever. And so what's the most efficient way to figure out what the best kind of carrot to plant is for you? Now, you could do it the hard way and do one at a time, and it'd take you 12 years. And then you finally figure it out. That's a huge waste of time. But obviously you would instead, any reasonable person, say, well, Sean, we'll plant one of each next to each other in the same dirt and see what happens. So when you think of other things you're experimenting with your business, how quickly can you learn what doesn't work? Because if you remove that from your possibilities of things you're going to do in the future, like we were talking about kimchi. I love your kimchi, but this is a silly example. Nobody likes the kimchi. Nobody's ever going to order it. Stop wasting your time. Like if you knew that was the conclusion, you would want to know that as soon as possible for the benefit of your business. Your kimchi is great. I'm just making that up. So how would you figure that out? And those are the things that you need to get that feedback loop, because it's actually, rather than ask what's the coolest product we could add, sometimes removing the thing that's kind of toxic and not healthy or profitable is just as beneficial. And this could go for business, your life, or anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
Absolutely. Business and life, because at the end of the day, whether you're self-employed or not, business is a huge part of life. I mean, we're there for like a third of it or more. And those who try to continue to just compartmentalize and separate and say, well, that's that, and this is that. I guess you can do that, but I was always miserable when I tried to just I always, what am I trying to say here? I'm trying to tie this into into some balance, and I don't know. I completely lost my train of thought.
I think I know where you're going though. And I do the same thing, Rob. If you said, hey, Sean, your career's all blown up and it's like your interview with Cody, the other day,
yeah,
completely different lifestyle than my own, but I absolutely was like listening to things. It's like, okay, I'm not 100% all that way that would align with what my goals or interests are. But I did kind of empathize a bit and think, okay, if I was in that situation, how would I navigate that? How would I sort through what was going to work better or not? Because even if you have that as your lifestyle and your income source, you still have to sort through these problems. You don't want to grow a crop that's not going to yield well. You don't want to market something that's going to lose money for every unit, whatever it is. It doesn't matter if it's handmade soap or if it's microchips. I mean, you have those fundamental problems. You're wasting your time and you're not pleasing your customers. Or if you're not fulfilled and you're not enjoying it and you're losing money, well, that's awful, right? So at least you should get one of those things. So
yeah,
that's just, my mind goes there regardless of what I'm doing. I mean, I could be cooking or something, or digging a hole and planting a tree, and wow, this is a great deal on the tree, but it took me 4 hours to dig the hole. I just, my brain just goes through, risk reward and all that all the time. It's because I'm a nerd that way.
And that's, but a lot of people aren't, and so to maybe draw things to a close or a little bit of conclusion is, not everybody is a nerd, and Dave Ramsey and Financial Peace, they talk about how a lot of couples are, you've got your nerd and your free spirit. And I'm just a single dude, and we're all hanging out in this, in not only in this all around growth community, but all these other communities that are doing this. And there's a healthy population of nerds and free spirits and people who are a healthy combination of both. And then it's a really cool thing to, it's a really cool thing to get to know you both and other people who are participating in this and get exposed to all kinds of new things, new thought processes, new ways of thinking about things, even just little nuanced adjustments like you just mentioned with regard to goals. It's all good stuff. And I don't know. I wanted to say thanks to you guys for jumping on and being a part of everything, and also give you guys an opportunity to talk about anything that's of interest to you or anything that you guys are doing. Maybe, self promote or share what's up so that anybody out there watching or listening that found this kind of thing interesting can go find more interesting things. What are you guys up to?
I think Rachel's up. She's got some cool content lately.
I don't know.
You're sizzling right now.
Come on.
Go ahead. Shameless plug. Go.
I actually just wanted to thank Rob, because your podcast, even though it's kind of been all over the place, I actually kind of appreciate the variety. It's really been motivating lately. You've just really been on fire with the goal setting and just you being really open. I really appreciate that the realness of your podcast. It's like so many people in the podcast world really, I don't know, it seems unachievable, and they live this lifestyle, and yours just comes across. This is Rob behind the scenes. This is Rob in his podcast. Rob is Rob. And I just really appreciate that. And it's motivating to me to, as I kind of start delving into being online a little bit more with my own things I'm doing, to just keep real. And I don't care if that means I get docked for time or docked for whatever. If people don't like it, I just don't care. To me, it's more important to be authentic. And yeah.
I agree. +1, as we would do in chat. Was what Rachel said.
So where did people find Rachel's authenticity?
Oh, on the Modern Homesteading podcast, and then on my very baby blog, rewilderlife.com. And that's like baby. That's one of my goals for this winter, as we get snowed in and both of my homesteads are under a blanket resting, is to learn all that tech, which I absolutely loathe. And yet I love it too, because it's what's connecting me to a community like this.
Yeah.
It's like I have like that both. I hate it and I love it. I realize it's a necessary thing, and I've met great people through it, but I am not the greatest at it. So I have to make myself learn a lot of things, especially about the blogging and tech stuff.
As you get more tech savvy, it's only going to get better, because while it's a baby blog and maybe a baby thing, what you've done over there is really cool. And you've got all sorts of stuff, from the breads that you're doing, like the gluten-free sourdoughs, to what did you just do recently? It was a jar of something.
Apple cider vinegar.
Yeah.
Strap vinegar, not quite apple cider vinegar, but yeah.
Yeah. So there's just lots of cool stuff. Like, I like seeing the things that you're doing, and I get stoked learning more. And I hope to, as time goes on, like, bring you back on to talk about some of that stuff. And you too, Sean, because like maybe, you're not like the content creator, podcaster, YouTube streamer, TikToker or whatever, but you still have a lot of good insight and interesting perspectives and a lot of cool life experience that I think a lot of people, would take value in. And if you're interested in coming on just to talk again in the future, then let's do it. I thought this was cool, and I'm glad that you guys showed up, and I hope that maybe future live streams turn into something like this, where we have more open dialogue with people about, well, I don't know, maybe with some structure or maybe without, but it's cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. It was cool. It was great to hear all of this. And sometimes you just need a prompt for something. It's like, hey, we're gonna, I'm like in the spring, like we're all gonna talk about planning. Hey, what are we gonna grow? That's kind of a fun thing to do. What seeds am I gonna plant first? And what's your schedule? And that's when the almanacs come out. How quickly can I plant my peas? And what's the last freeze date? And all that kind of stuff. And but that's rarely what you're going to stick with. That's just your jumping off point. And you'll be talking about your dogs or your job or something within a few minutes, I'm sure.
Yeah.
as it happens, right?
Yeah.
Well, and it's nice to actually, like, I was telling Rob this last night, to actually converse with him in person. It's nice to actually meet Sean in person, and it's
Likewise.
definitely very different than text. You miss so much in text.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, there's some weird tone things sort of this is kind of weird, but at least you can sort of get a feel of body language and things like that.
Right.
And certainly tone and angry faces and whatever. So anyways, I guess we'll get on with the rest of our days. And again, thanks so much, Sean, and thanks, Rachel. And guys, check out Rachel at Rewilder Life, and come everybody check out Sean and everyone else in the community at t.me/allaroundgrowth, which is where we are most active online, and with some hope and assistance, increasingly active on all these other social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and things like MeWe. So
it's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
Yes,
Thanks, guys.
Awesome.
And we'll connect later online and elsewhere. So
yeah.
Well,
have a good weekend and happy Thanksgiving if we don't chat virtually again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if we don't, happy Thanksgiving to you as well, Sean, and you, Rachel, and to your families as well. Take care, guys.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Well, okay. So we are back. This is still going. This is still live streaming. I want to say thanks to Sean and Rachel for jumping on. I'm very grateful that they jumped on, joined the call, got to share a little bit about, what brought them here, some of the changes that are going on in their life that they experience, especially with Sean. And, both Sean and Rachel are good people. We've got a lot of other good people in the group. And like I said, you can find out more and connect with everybody over on Telegram. And I would encourage you to do so, at t.me/allaroundgrowth. And in talking with Rachel last night, we did talk about social medias and some of the challenges in keeping up with everything. And we both are of the opinion that Telegram is a good platform in the way that it's structured, in the way that it operates, but also in the user base that's there. There seems to be a type of people that are there that maybe are not as prevalent, if you will, on other social media platforms, or perhaps it's maybe just easier to connect with them. Either way, Telegram is a cool platform that I would definitely recommend checking out. And you can find us there at t.me/allaroundgrowth from your browser. And it's very easy to install on your desktop machine, laptop, tablet, phone, whatever the case may be. You can also find All Around Growth, the podcast itself, at allaroundgrowth.co. And one thing that you can do is you can see this. When you go to allaroundgrowth.com, you can find out all of the various podcast players to listen to the show on. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever you like, you can find us there. Just search for All Around Growth on your favorite podcast player. And the entire backlog of 467 episodes outside of this one, number 468, is there for your enjoyment or eye-rolling pleasure. Because as we know, there is a history in this show that is unique. And that's who I am. And what you see is what you get. I don't put on an air about anything with this show. I try to be as authentic as I can be And in life, I'm trying to become even more authentic of a human, because the authentic humans that I engage with on a regular basis inspire me and motivate me to be not more like them, but more like me. And in large part, that's what this show is a process of discovering myself, trying to become a better person, and sharing that journey with you. And for those of you that are along for the ride, I'm sincerely grateful for you. I appreciate you being a part of this. I appreciate you effectively forming the community that is out there, because if it wasn't for you, this wouldn't really be. So thanks. Guys, I hope that you have a great day, and I look forward to catching you on another episode Monday. Have a wonderful weekend. Have a great day. This is Rob Kaiser, and thank you.